I feel so much better. Oh, okay. This is. Yep. Okay, that's working. All right. So, I probably really shouldn't have. I wanted to start looking at what other people who are doing content for One Piece are doing. I regret that decision. I started really desiring to do this after watching a couple newcomers, people who haven't read the story yet, coming in and talking about it, because those fresh perspectives are really interesting and really engaging for me to watch, because it helps me like see what sticks out and what doesn't on a first read, and how buried some of this stuff might be. And I thought, maybe there is more out there that maybe isn't just people who are reading it for the first time, but like, older fans, people who are doing content. Um, it's a bit toxic. It's a bit really toxic. Lot of lot of tearing shit. I really hate the discussions on like, oh, this series is better than this one, yada yada yada. You can kind of there are some breakpoints, but like it's such an opinionated decision, and really only sometimes is it clear. And there's some that are very clear. I do tend to have kind of my own tier ranking system, E to S, and One Piece is one of many stories that are in that S tier, and I think that's the thing that most people have trouble understanding about tiering stories, is that you're not necessarily looking for the all-time best, because what do you do when you've only got one all-time best? Like, what's the point of that? You've now got nothing else to read. You want to be able to continue to read stuff. And to me, the true value of a tier system is that top tier and the bottom tier. The stories that you really shouldn't read, and the stories that you really should. Those are the most valuable parts of the tier list, and then the in between is good on a personal level for deciding which stories you might want to revisit, which stories you might want to see more content in, which stories you might want to trace. I generally, any stories that are in my A and B category are stories that I'm constantly keeping an eye on, watching, wanting to see what else they're going to do. These are your Hero Academias and One Punch Man, and like Hero Academia is a bit sad. It dropped from S from me for me recently. There were some recent decisions that made it a little bit too. They're reaching for something that they didn't build up properly. Um, it weakens it. It doesn't destroy it. It just weakens it. One Punch Man is another one that I am looking at. As this is a potential S tier story, but the way One Punch Man is written, it's like it's gonna depend entirely on how they stick the landing. How that story ends is going to determine whether or not it is a strong A or breaks into S for me. Because everything that's being built on in that story is built in such a way that it could really totter over with a bad ending. But then, like, to watch them voting, not even bothering to vote, but like just trying to discuss rankings on a bracket. Oh, God, brackets. Oh, that was so dumb. It's just, the moment that you place an E tier story over a B tier, a solid B tier, is like the moment that I don't see any value in you as a critical reader, especially when like most of them haven't even haven't even read or watched the B tier story. This is just like it's a big fish in a small pond, and to throw some hate out there and certainly piss off anybody who comes here thinking I might be a favorable manga reviewer, the E-tier story in question is Naruto. I accept your hatred. I read that entire fucking story. It is terrible. It's legitimately terrible. It's just a bad story. It found new ways to fail. The only thing Naruto has going for it is that it taught me how bad a story can be. It taught me new ways to fail at storytelling. That's it. So, you can... I don't really want to discuss stories I don't like on this when I'm doing this. It's not something that I'm really interested in doing. I will not hesitate to mention or throw shade, and if someone wants to debate me, I'm willing to take that, because I read that damn thing and I enjoyed parts of it. There's this very solid middle part to that story in a sea of shit. So I'm willing to take that debate. But I really shouldn't have been looking around for theory crafting on this story, because it just was going to piss me off. A lot of people just don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, I get the neat prediction theories and yada yada yada, and there's fun to that. I don't mind that part of it as much. I do mind the power scaling, the tiering characters, the like, oh, is this character better than this character? It's like it's not the purpose of the story. It's not even like something that One Piece is vaguely interested in doing. The fucking manga trope of putting numbers to power scale a person, which the numbers always mean nothing. The neat writing trick with that is when frickin' Vegeta's power thing that is the trick, is that his thing explodes, is that it's a number higher than his machine can calculate. Like, that's the point of that trick. It's not the number that it reached. It's not the over 9,000 bit, which is funny. But like, the writer could have pulled out any number without any reference point. There's no purpose to that number. The writer can create even a reference point, but even then, once you move past a certain number, it starts to be meaningless. What is 10,000 times the strength of a normal human? What does that even look like? These numbers are just a little writing trick, and it is infinitely sad that became a trope in manga and anime telling. This is probably the curse that Dragon Ball Z left upon this storytelling. But One Piece took that trope and was infinitely clever with it. And that leads right into the topic at hand, Arlong Park, at the end of which Luffy gets his bounty. Because the bounty system is about how the Marines value certain people. How much danger is XYZ person worth? How much of a threat are they? How much of a problem are they? That's the point of the bounty system. It's not an accurate number. To have Luffy come in to Wano and have, what is it, a 2 billion bounty? And Kaido have a 6 billion bounty. That means nothing. that tells you nothing about where Luffy is in terms of power versus where Kaido is in terms of power. It's absolutely meaningless. All that tells you is that the Marines are very threatened by Luffy, and they feel far more threatened of Kaido. That's all that tells you. it's important information, and that's the brilliance of the bounty system, is that it's a storytelling mechanism that is used to give the reader useful information. How much notoriety, how well known are these characters at which points in the story, and how well known are the people that they're going up against? What's the notoriety? It's such a clever use of the trope to instead twist it and actually create a useful system of information. And a system of information that becomes more useful the further into the show that you get, as you get bounty numbers for the villains that we come across. That is the beauty of this story, is that it takes this kind of useless, tropey idiocy and turns it into something that's absolutely incredibly useful information that's delivered so simply, and also really good emotional moments, because in a lot of ways those bounty cards, when those bounties go back out, when those wanted posters go back out with the new bounties, what it's telling the friends and family that the crew has made along the way is that we're alive, we're doing well, and we're getting closer to our dreams. And that is, without them ever having to write a letter, without them ever having to send a message to them, it is telling them we are okay. And it is such a fucking genius move. Like, so Arlong Park. Arlong Park really starts at Barate. And we get this kind of shift from where we were at the end of Syrup Village, where we're dealing with the ego. And Don Krieg comes in, and Don Krieg is kind of a mixture of ego and deception. He comes in and he knowingly deceives the restaurant, and the restaurant knows that he's deceiving. The restaurant owner, Zeph, and Sanji know that he's deceiving them. They know, but they're willing to give them food. And some people will point out the absurdity of, like, the starvation, and some of it is just kind of the absurdist, they can last longer than a month without food. There is a little bit There's a little bit of mythologizing. That's such a hard word. It's an old word. It's the kind of stuff that was done around gods and god wanted and god adjacents. I hesitate to just say demigods because there was a range. There, in older mythic tales, there was a range between god and god adjacent that includes demigods, semigods, and humans with divine power and humans that may become divine. So there's a kind of like spectrum. So it's like between god and god adjacent. There's these things of like, and one of those things is being able to last without food or water longer than usual, being able to do things at a younger age. We used to get stories like this here where it was like, oh, this is a child genius. They've got a college degree at 8. And it's like, no fucking 8-year-old will ever get a college degree. Not because of how smart they are. It has nothing to do with how smart they are. The entire point of a college degree is bureaucracy. So there's this absurdism involved. And it is a little bit of a hurdle at times. I wouldn't have minded it if he just kind of kept the dates. He didn't have to say they went beyond what a human normally could. That said, I also kind of want to point out time may be functionally meaningless in this story. Keep in mind Ennis Lobby is a daylight island, which means that the sun is in the sky 24/7, 365 days a year. So whatever this planet is, it somehow has the rotation of the sun around the planet, sunrise and sunset, and also a portion of the planet is locked to the sun. So maybe the planet itself doesn't spin, but no, even that wouldn't make sense. Time may be functionally meaningless. And time may also be different than normal. It's hard to tell. What may be, 80 days in One Piece time might be 3 weeks in real time. It's hard to tell. Because, it isn't... There are theories I can have, especially having rewatched Ennis Lobby twice in a row recently. Looking at Ennis Lobby and going, this is a very specifically crafted island with very specific conditions that the Marines control for very specific purposes. And Impel Down is the same way, and Marineford is the same way. And then you look at things like Zoe and the chained ancients, and you have to wonder, how much power did the world government have? Did they have the ability? Did they find the ability to do such drastic damage as creating an eternal waterfall, punching a hole in the planet big enough to have water pouring in constantly? I watch Ennis Lobby and I'm like, what's at the bottom of that hole? I almost would give anything to have one of the characters fall in, just to find out what is at the bottom of the hole, other than the judicial tower, which fell in. Fuck you. That's for later. I want to do I do have theories. I do have things that I want to theorize about. I'm sorry, I am in the middle of watching Ennis Lobby. I just came out from Bluno getting his ass kicked. So, there's a little bit of a tingly joy and in me, because that's one of my favorite arcs. There's so many good moments. So let's pull back to Barate, because now this is kind of where I'm starting to rationalize away a little bit of the mythologizing, and it's still a bit of a chink in the story. It's still a hurdle. It's a suspension of disbelief hurdle that people have to cross, and it's not to the benefit of the series. There were easier ways to do this. There were easier ways to do this and be a little bit less absurd. I think the biggest issue is that he is setting up everything he's going to be doing in the coming story in these first few chapters. So one of the things that he's trying to set up early is that characters are going to go 30-40% further than normal humans can. Characters are going to be pushed past what is what would kill a normal person. I'm going to be brutal to these people, and they're going to survive. I don't know. It's hard. It's difficult to kind of deal with the and you know, like the complaints about these people are starving to death and they're given a single meal and they're better, and it's like, well, metaphor being what it is, and people are like, oh, but it's only Luffy that gets better after they eat, and I'm gonna tell you, it's not. I mean, aside from the entire cast that it gets involved in Barate, you also have Zoro, Brook, Usopp's recovered from meals before, Sanji's recovered from meals before. You have characters in Wano who recover from just having a single meal. You have Punk Hazard. You have characters in Punk Hazards, especially the samurai. All of the samurai do this bullshit where they just eat a meal and are immediately better. Oh my god, she needs me. All right, this. God damn it! I really did not want to stop in the middle of one of these. The pain of editing this is going to be so terrible. All right, I'm gonna try to figure out how to edit these. I've got to get up and take care of her. God, I'm gonna have to go quickly. I'm on camera. Here's that. I know I forgot to do this stupid thing. You know, let's just skip this one for tonight. We don't need it tonight. Let's just not do that. It's just a fucking thing. Here, just have that. We'll just skip it tonight. We don't need it. I did want to take the opportunity to get my other water. I forgot that I hadn't drunk this. More water for me. I will try and edit this. Where was I? I got distracted. But yeah, no, like many characters in the story do recover very quickly after being fed. It is actually, again, you got to kind of look at the metaphor of the thing. Sanji's storyline is very much about setting up how important food is in the story. And food is very important in One Piece. One of the core themes is things that are more valuable than money. Things that are more important than money. We'll later get to Dr. Kureha, who will take, lots of stuff from people in exchange for curing their child and saving their child's life. What's more valuable than money? That's the question constantly being asked. What are the things that are more valuable than money? And Sanji's story arc is the first, we're gonna make this message and we're gonna paint it on a billboard so that the idiots in the back, and it's interesting to note how, Oda's usually very nuanced about his messaging. And this one, this is the one that he felt he had to put in big, bold letters and, hire a skywriter. That the line of Zeph sitting on that island, it's funny. I have all the gold that I could ever want. I have this giant bag of gold, and I can't get a scrap of food. I have nothing to I can't eat it. It is, food is one of the things, and food is a reoccurring theme in One Piece. A lot of times, if he wants to tell that an island is in bad times, food scarcity is the first thing that he says. The first thing that comes up is food scarcity. Problems with getting or sending food. And this becomes a major theme in Wano later, where the food isn't just inaccessible, it's poisoned. The land itself is poisoned. And how harsh that is. Again, we're that moves far into the future. Food is a gigantic theme in One Piece, and importantly, it's one of those qualities very, very near and dear to everyone that gets close to the One Piece. everyone seeking Laugh Tale cares very deeply about food. So it is important to understand that what's happening, a lot of the absurdity about the food in Barate is setting up how foundational food is going to be for the story in general. Like, it is such a just functionally central part of the story that he felt like he needed to, spell it out in the boldest letters he can. And a part of that is the story is also a very anti-greed story. It's a very anti-money story. And this is one of those things that, like, it is obvious when you take a second to think about it, but so few people take a second to think about it that it feels like it needs to be yelled. Money can only buy you food if there's a society around that you can buy food from. If you don't have a society, that money is useless. You can't eat it. You can only eat the food. And that is, a crux of this arc as well. And this is why, characters that have been starving probably for weeks and are, near death are revived by a single meal. But that too is also kind of leaning into just how sturdy people are in this universe. You'll often see characters nearing death's door. Bluff is a thing that happens a lot in these stories. Don Krieg, I would hazard a guess, was not fighting at full strength. In fact, probably part of the reason that he was so reliant on his tools and weapons was because he probably wasn't fighting at full strength. He had only gotten one meal in him. But being what he is and being in the situation he is in, where he needs to take this restaurant, like, flip the circumstances around. This is the first time that we've got a villain that's actually desperate. His ship's not doing too hot. By the middle of the story, Hawkeye cuts his ship into pieces. His only option is that restaurant. By any means necessary, he has to get that restaurant. He has to claim it. Water is so good too. So does it behoove him to show that he's still not fully strong, or does it behoove him to put up a face and look like he's a fucking badass who just took one meal and is back to full strength and kicking again? And Luffy does in fact recover quite a lot of strength from a single meal. He expends that strength at a frightening pace, and he consumes a frightening amount of food too. Luffy is a weird person. I mean, all of the cleverness of the writing doesn't cover for the fact that Luffy's just a weird person. And it's part of the charm, and it's part of the fun, and it is part of the story. He is just slightly different than everyone else, and that remains true throughout the story. A lot of the characters just slightly different from other people, outcasts generally. So yeah, no, it's. I'm gonna guess that there was definitely the idea that food does have this reviving effect in the universe. Just universally, it has a reviving effect. It also has and I also assume that there's a little bit of bluffing going on. I think this is also the first like fake out death with Gin, where he inhales a bunch of poison, and like he's said, oh, and he's told, oh, you're definitely gonna die, and then like, well, I guess we don't see him ever again. Yeah, we don't see him ever again. There's a raft out there. There's a boat of some sort out there, full of decaying bodies. Well, it's probably eaten by sea kings by now. Yikes. The story can be brutal at times. I will point out, and this is something that I was thinking about when it came to fake out deaths. Because like I was watching, other people do theorizing and talking to one of these newer readers, and they were talking about the fake out deaths and how much the fake out deaths weaken the deaths all over. To some extent, I do agree with that, but to some extent, I also warn that it kind of that's a thing that cuts both ways. Like if you removed all of the fake out deaths from One Piece, the body count would be enormous, and it would actually start to weaken the impact of the big deaths. I've seen it in other shows. I've seen it in other series. Game of Thrones is famous for this. By the end of the first season, by the end of the second season, for sure, you're basically desensitized. People are dying. People have just been dying all over the place. Nobody cares. Fuck it. Who cares? You desensitize. So even like big name deaths, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No emotional impact whatsoever. So there's a tightrope to be walked, and Oda stands closer to the as few deaths as possible side of that tightrope, and I don't disagree with him. Personally, a lot of times, deaths or near death scenes or fake out and even fake out deaths serve a temporary purpose, especially in One Piece. A character is in danger temporarily, possibly or probably dead temporarily. At least the perception of them being dead is necessary for one of the other characters in order to get them to do something or get into an emotional state in order to push them to where they need to go. That is part of why the deaths are rare. Once the impact on the story is done, Oda, if there isn't a ongoing reason for the person to remain dead, then it's better that they're just kind of alive again, than keeping them dead. Because for many reasons, because for one, you can have the character come back later and actually die, and it'll be more impactful later. Or they can be useful. Like they can, especially if he thinks they can contribute more to the story, which is part of the reason why like backstory deaths tend to be pretty permanent. Most characters killed, like it literally, the relationship flips when it comes to the backstories. The majority of backstory characters are killed. When they die in a backstory, they're fucked. And because the backstories don't account for most of the show, it still works. And this is also kind of part of why, like, during the main show, he doesn't kill people very often. Is because he is doing a lot of killing. It's just in the backstories. And he doesn't want that to bleed in. The second thing that occurred to me And this may or may not be confirmed later on. Who knows? But I think I was listening to these two chat, and one of them I think stumbled onto the answer to this because they were talking about Dalton and Dalton's situation, and I think Dalton's entire situation was not even like a purposeful fake out death. I think that one was entirely there to show just how medically advanced that island was to go from so advanced to one doctor. And how much of a tragedy that is. But he was talking about Dr. Hiruluk's speech about when does a man die? When does a man truly die? When they cease to be remembered. Memory is tied to willpower. Almost every character that has a fake-out death. In fact, every character that has a fake-out death. Aside from one. There's one that I can think of that has a fake-out death, and no, even him. Every character that has a fake-out death has a connection to Luffy. Luffy knows him or her. Luffy remembers them. Luffy's fond of them. Luffy's willpower is monstrous. Luffy's willpower within series, Luffy's willpower is monstrous. Luffy's willpower is enough to make Kaido shake. Luffy's willpower is strong enough that when he figures out how to weaponize it, he's able to make the other Yonko fear him. So who's to say that by Luffy remembering someone fondly, they're not afforded an extra level of protection? Not total protection, but an extra layer of soak up some extra damaging protection, which then, helps explain a lot of these. And, people will point to Pell, and I'm like, you understand that explosives in this world are extremely underpowered. They do property damage. They do lots of property damage with explosives. Explosives are very dangerous if you are a building or like a chunk of dirt. If you're a human, the explosives, they suck. They hurt. They can be very draining. A lot of people are stunned by explosives. I have yet to see an explosive kill a person in this show. Period. People have eaten explosives and survived. Explosives just don't do a lot of damage in this series. Explosives are very, very weak compared to other abilities in this show. This is just a fact of this world, is that explosives just aren't very strong. They're a blaze of heat and pain, and that's about it. Things that are more dangerous, bullets, blades, anything that's sharp. Getting your head chopped off is definitely a good way to die, unless you're Lucia. Unless they're using hockey. There's always qualifiers with this series. So, it's explosives just... So, you take Pell's situation and he explodes with that giant bomb. And I personally think that Crocodile was more expecting the property damage to be what wiped out the population. Because launch the bomb to the middle of the city, it's going to crater the city in. It's going to wipe out the city, and that overturning of the land will bury most of the people. He's expecting them to be buried alive in a half dead state. Explosives do damage. They do hella damage, but they aren't lethal. They don't do lethal damage. I've never seen them do lethal. They do down to 1 HP. They can't go down below 1 HP. And I'm pretty sure that's what he was expecting, was for this entire city to kind of collapse in on itself and crush the people and crush the population. But Pell took it above and blew up. And, up there it's just heat and fire. And Pell's good friends with Luffy. Pell fed Luffy. I don't think you get friendlier with Luffy than feeding him. You feed Luffy, you've got a friend for life. Right there. He will beat the devil down to save your ass. So, if there is this willpower memory protection coming off of Luffy, from Luffy's just massive willpower, then Pell had plenty of protection on his body. Things like burning your organs out, that's lethal. Getting multiple holes through your gut, like big gate, being able to see through your chest to the other side, that's pretty lethal. Depending. But like, even the fucking world nobles, the celestial dragons, with their stupid little ring collars, the one that went off didn't kill the fucking slave. He was still alive. His head was on fire, but he was still alive. It took the celestial dragon coming up, and this is, I think, the purpose of those explosives, is to tell them, oh, one's escaping, and that's where I will find their mostly unconscious body, and then he puts bullets in him, and that kills him. This is the same argument that I use to understand Pedro, to understand Pedro's death, because he blew himself up. I assume that his body was fine. But also he's between Tongue Bastard, Prospero, and Big Mom. And both of those characters are more than willing to just finish him in a weakened state. So, if he shows back up, and he might, I fully would not be surprised if he shows up in, like, Mortimer's book prison thing. I might be getting his name wrong. Because Big Mom also strikes me as the type of person who's like, oh, I've got this unconscious body that Luffy, that Straw Hat might care about. Bargaining chip. If I need it, something in the back pocket, just in case I need some extra leverage, because that is the type of person Big Mom is. So that one could cut either way. I can see that happening in either direction, especially as those fights are coming into a climax now in the current manga, with Prospero getting his ass kicked. Prospero and Jack in for pain. Though I guess Jack wouldn't know about the bargaining chip. But still, both of them are in for some pain. Whew. I am way off track, and a large part of that is Arlong Park is a painful story. Arlong Park hurts. But let's wrap up with Barate. I'm gonna barely get through Barate because I'm getting distracted. So wrap up with Barate. Barate is like the first one that you should be able to recognize where the metaphor is. This is like the first time. Barate is a lot of kind of bold print for Oda. This is almost the catch net of, if you haven't caught on to the metaphors in this story, I'm gonna kind of spell them out for you, and people still miss it. It's kind of incredible. People still miss it. Because like this one, really, you can see the metaphor unraveling. He's got tools and armor and protection, and he keeps his opponents at a distance. and he's just got a tool for every situation. He's got 1,000 arms. He's got, like, art weapons everywhere. He's just, bullets, flying weapons, poisons, spears, explosives. It's just an armory stashed on a single human being. He's a walking tank. He is protecting himself. He is protecting himself from everything. He is unwilling to take risks himself and therefore seeks the best protection possible. And so rather than be a master of any one of these weapons, he instead is capable of using lots of them, perhaps not one particularly good. Which is why Zeph, watching this fight unfurl, is like, pay attention to that kid. Sometimes a good spear can break through even the strongest defense. And, what does Luffy do? He breaks he breaks Don Krieg's spear, he breaks Don Krieg's armor, he breaks Don Krieg's face, he beats him through the cape. If I can't hit him because I'm afraid of getting hurt, then I'm going to lose. That, like, these are statements that are not just metaphorical, they're quite literal. This is a character that relies so heavily on defense that he has defended his way into losing. He doesn't have a means of victory. And that is what ended him so quickly on the Grand Line, which requires risk, which requires the willingness to get hurt, to get messy. That is, that is that story. And that story leads in, and that story and deception and cowardice leads into Arlong very easily. Because that is the same story of Arlong, who has fled from the Grand Line to the East Blue, where no one's gonna fuck with him. It's the fucking Boondocks. Who cares? No admiral, or even vice captain, or, well, some captains probably could have handled him. Maybe. Certain captains, certain Marine captains. But none of them are in East Blue. Like, any of the captains that have, power capabilities are all frontlining in the Grand Line. Their hands are full. They're where the action is. East Blue is so far from the action. No one's coming. No one's going to save these people. And Arlong has set up his little base of operations. He's hiding. He talks a big game, but he's never going to go. He's been there for 8 years. Waiting, biding his time. For what? He wants Nami to make a map of the world. When? How is she going to get out to make a map of the world? So, these are the short-sighted things. These are the fears that define Arlong's character. These are the things that are unsaid that define that bravado and abuse. And let's now talk to the thing that had me crying all morning is the abuse. The abuse, that storyline is about parental abuse. It's about found family, and it's about the two sides of the found family coin. It's about the good, the fact that that Nami's mother and Nami's sister are neither blood related to her or to each other, that these are three people who have formed a family because they all experienced this hell together. They came out of hell together, and they're a family. She adopted these two kids, and she's taking care of them. and she's been taking care of them. And how wonderful their relationship is. Yeah, you know, they have this argument, they have this fight, and Nami's mother isn't a perfect parent, but she's also a very kind parent. And then you have the flip side of that coin, the forced adoption. And that is what it is. That is what this is. He forcibly adopts Nami. He sees the value in her and takes her and adopts her. And he gives her clothes, and he gives her a place to stay, and he gives her nice things. He gives her money, things that she's never had before, but he also kills her mother in front of her, and he also abuses the shit out of her, and he also makes her do all of this work for him. The flip side of that coin, because this does happen, the narcissist, the one that sees the kid and says, that is mine, this is now an extension of me, this is a part of my power, they are not an individual from me. And the cool metaphor that is happening in this arc that makes that kind of makes the lights come on is that the fishmen come in and demand a tax, and when the tax isn't paid, they flip the house over. And if you've ever talked to or seen a child who has been in a stable living condition and had someone abusive come in, have a stepfather or stepmother who is abusive come in, it feels like the house has been flipped over. It feels like this place that was safe, this place that was home, has become hell, has become an exposure. There's a gaping hole in the roof, and the elements are hitting you, and there's nothing you can do. The foundation of the house is ruined, and there's no escape. There's nowhere to go. It is such a powerful metaphor for that kind of familial abuse. And this is the kind of shit that gets me crying. Because it's so well written, and it's so powerful. It's such a powerful imagery. And the girls split in the way that all abused children do, and they almost are always more than one child that of an abusive parent. There's almost always more than one, and they split. You have the rebel Nojiko, who doesn't want any of this crap and isn't putting up with any of this crap, but is willing to keep her tongue for the subjected, the subject, the slave, the one that willingly bows their head, the one that seeks the path of least resistance, the one that seeks the least. And of course, in this particular story, it is kind of more understandable why she would bow, but the fact of the matter is that in families where there is abuse, this happens constantly happens. One child will inevitably become the rebel, will inevitably become the black sheep, will inevitably become the one that all of the blame lies on, and one child will become the appeaser, will become the one that's willing to bow their head, do whatever needs to be done, take whatever abuse comes their way, because they believe that it will be less abuse. And Nojiko and Nami show a fairly healthy version of this split, where Nojiko isn't necessarily a rabble-rouser. She's keeping herself safe, but she is providing emotional support and comfort for Nami when Nami needs it. She is providing a place of cover for Nami to be herself. This is a fairly healthy version. My own version of this was me taking most of the heat, just kind of stirring the pot and dragging the heat onto me and just tanking the damage myself to pull the damage off of my sister. And, she still got plenty. I couldn't protect her from any of it, really. Which, I was a child. I didn't know. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even know why I was doing it. I just knew I had to. And Nami is the appeaser here. She strikes a deal with him. She agrees to work for him. She works herself to the bone for him. She bleeds over her desk, making these goddamn maps for him. And when he steals all of the money that she's made to complete her side of the deal, she immediately just says, I'll do it again. Appease the situation. Appease the beast. It's better than the alternative. But it isn't. And we aren't talking about a single household. We're talking about a town. And so when the town decides, no, we aren't going to stand here and watch him hurt you again. He's done this once, he'll do it again, he'll never let you go. He will find some other way to renege on his deal, and he will never let you go. If we all die, then you'll be free. At least we'll have died free as well. And this is why she has such a hard time asking for Luffy's help. Why she yells at him multiple times, but especially after everyone's left to go fight. Why she yells at him to just leave, to just go away, to not make this any worse than it already is. It's already cataclysmically bad. Everything she's spent her whole life doing, all of the appeasement, all of the energy she's put in to stop this monster from killing the people she cares about has been undone in a day. And here is a group of new people that she cares about and she doesn't want to see hurt, who are also ready to jump into that pile of what she presumes to be future dead bodies. People she is going to have to bury. And she doesn't want to see it. And when he doesn't go, and she realizes he's not going to go, that spark of hope, that spark, that moment of maybe, just maybe, I've seen him do incredible things. Just maybe he can do it. And it finally asking for help. That moment kills me every single time. It's such a good moment. He passes the hat off. And they go and they kick fucking ass. Oh my god. The Arlong Park arc is... There's a reason that people say that this is the one... If you're not into this show by the end of Arlong Park, I don't know what's wrong with you. You should get your head checked. That's, I think, my personal opinion on that. It is so masterfully written. And then we've got these fights. We've got incredible moments. And I try and focus on the big ones because, like, the big ones right now are kind of the main focus for me with this kind of first pass analysis. In part because when it comes to, like, Zoro's fights and Sanji's fights and Usopp's fights, those are far more dedicated to their character, their individual character growth and character arcs. At least in East Blue, compared to Luffy. Luffy doesn't really start to have character growth fights until Crocodile. Crocodile is really the first time that he has actual character growth in a fight. And I probably won't talk too much about that because I will be doing individual focuses for each of the characters. And that is going to include the growth that they experience and the way that the challenges that they face in each arc affect their future decisions. That I can do an entire... that is an entire separate channel for each of them. I am just talking about the metaphors within each of these contained storylines. Just the themes and ideas that are presented in each individual storyline. And you can again see where the metaphors come in. This fight where he's again breaking the tools, breaking the defenses, turning the jabs, the claw, the teeth. Oh my God. The verbal abuse. Those spiteful, jabbing remarks that are capable, that people who use verbal abuse are capable of, especially duplicitous bastards like Arlong. And to have stolen to have stolen one and put it in his own mouth and start turning the jabs against him, turning those spiteful remarks back on the abuser, in a metaphorical sense, because he doesn't know what's going on, but he knows what Nami's afraid of. And the fact that he again breaks every single weapon, every single tool. He breaks down every single argument that Arlong has over why he's supreme, why he is the patriarch of this family that consists of him. And then, once all of that's busted and broken, and all of his arguments are shit, he busts Nami's room open, breaking everything he forced her to make, destroying it, pushing it out for the world to see exactly the type of scumbag this fucker was, so that everyone knows the abuse. And this is a key thing, because the most difficult thing about abusive parents is that you cannot see them being abusive. In public, they are always the kindest people to their child. They are always so kind and sweet to their children in public. They speak volumes of their child to other people. They're sweet. They're kind. But if you were to see the child's room, you'd see what's wrong with the house. You can see when there's something wrong. And, again, both me and my sister had different adaptations to how we dealt with. My sister got lots of stuff. Her room was an absolute mess. And it was because she wanted to hide the things that she cared about. And the best way to do it was to just have lots of stuff, so that there was a good chance that the things that she cared about weren't going to be picked out, picked on, taken away from her, destroyed. For me, it was just to not have anything. My room was bare, empty. To this day, all of the stuff in this room isn't mine. It isn't my stuff. I don't own... I try to own as little as absolutely possible. Because that way, it can't be taken from me. You can't take something I don't have. And, Nami's room is the same way. You can see the work that she was forced to do, how how blood-stained the pens are, how worn down the chair and the table is, how piled up with maps and stuff and work and labor this room is. And he just pushes it all out onto the street in front of everyone, shows the whole town exactly the type of abusive fucking asshole this man was to this child. And then he punts his head through the fucking house and cracks the goddamn building in two and buries him in his own fucking bullshit. It is such a powerful story and so well done that when we loop back around to it in Shibondi and Fishman Island, when these things come back up and the fishmen start to come back up, it's such a stain that it's so hard. It's almost intentional. It's almost intentional to make us hate the fishmen early, so that we get that small twinge of regret. We can at least identify that small twist of the knife of we hated these people but we didn't understand. And it's intentional because a lot of times people don't grasp what racism is or how racism works. And what understanding it feels like, what that tiny spark of, and it's very slight. He doesn't go heavy-handed. It's not a huge, oh, you're all assholes moment. It's not treated like that. There's a lot of very cleverly placed moments because, Hachi did do terrible things to Nami. He isn't forgiven for those things, but there's an understanding, and it's important to understand that even if someone who looks different than you, acts different than you, does something bad, that isn't a black mark for everyone that looks like that person. That it might not even be a black mark for that person. And Hachi was a probably intentional pick because he was a doofus in Arlong Park too. She even admits in Shibondi that he really didn't do much. He didn't really do much to her. He was closer to one of the nice ones there, and it makes sense. He's a fucking doofus. Like, even in Arlong Park, he's a fucking doofus. His entire fight with Zoro is hilarious. The fact that, he carries Zoro to the village first because he thinks that Zoro's an important person without ever checking what's on the other side of the wall where Zoro has just slaughtered his entire crew. Hachi is a doofus. And, so that was a good pick there of he participated and he did kind of understand, but he also didn't agree with it and was doing what he thought was best, what he thought he could do to mitigate Arlong. He even, admits that to that later, even though much later, because he says, I didn't really want to make this an excuse for my behavior, which is correct. That is the honorable way to put it. Is he did still fuck up. His good intentions led to bad results. It's still his responsibility, but it also helps mitigate the fact that he was there trying to keep things less bad. God. Oh. It's a good thing that... Well, no, it's not a good thing, because the next fucking thing is fucking Alabasta. Again, I have, thought about... Because I'm looking at themes. I'm looking at, story beats and themes. And the main theme for Alabasta does stretch all the way back to Logtown. the characters in Logtown are responding to the same themes, which for Alabasta is ambition beyond your station. I have to stop, but this will be a little bit of a hint for tomorrow, because I don't know, I might have to break Alabasta's setup into two, just because I'm going to be going from Logtown, Reverse Mountain, Whiskey Peaks, Little Garden, Drum Island, and Alabasta. And I have had a hard time getting through 3 in an hour. I'm already over time. And this one was 2, with a little rant at the beginning, and in the middle. That's going to be common themes. So Alabasta might be a multi-part discussion for me, and that might start to become a thing, because these stories only get more complicated from here. I could probably write a novel just about the stuff that happens in Arlong Park. God, I'm going to be doing multiple passes. I'm going to keep talking until I talk, and until I've talked myself out. And that's going to be a very big, dense, upfront chunk. I'm going to put out a rough guess of I've probably got about a month or 2 worth of just One Piece discussion, and then after that it's going to slow down drastically. I'm not one of those people who's going to be doing weekly reviews. I'm not one of those. I can't. You can't have enough to talk about every week with this story. Nothing of intense value. Not if you've put everything out on the table already. But I will probably move on to talking about other stories. I really want to talk about Gintama too, which is another one of these stories that I classify as an S tier story. A story that just there isn't really a way I could see a story being told manifestly better, which is kind of my definition for S tier. There isn't a way that you could tell a story that is just clearly better. This is just impossible. There's no way you could actually outclass these stories. This is just a pinnacle. This is a peak. How high that peak is? It's a very high peak. And Gintama is another one where it's just I don't know if you could tell and I don't know how I'm going to discuss Gintama. Gintama is such a weird story. But I'll give it a shot after I'm done with One Piece. That one's going to also take me a while to get through. And then we'll see where we go from there. I've got people, if people get interested and I'm starting to get comments and I'm starting to get, engagement, I might take recommendations, move to different topics, move to different stories. I might move to different, to varying story types, start talking about new and different things. Who knows? That's a few months out. We're giving this kind of a trial run, and we're going to see what happens. Tomorrow, I'm going to start Alabasta. I'm going to start talking about Alabasta, and I don't know when I'm going to stop. It might be 2 or 3 or 4 parts. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how long this takes me to get through, to finish talking about everything that happens in Alabasta, because there's a lot. There's a lot. Holy shit, there's a lot. I'm way over time. Bye.